Commander Elena Blackwood's boots clicked against the polished floor of the diplomatic vessel Stellar Dawn as she made her final preparations. The ship's subtle vibrations told her they were about to drop out of hyperspace near the neutral station Nexus 7, where representatives from Earth and Centauri would negotiate a new arms limitation treaty. But Elena wasn't really a diplomat. Her real mission lay deep within the station's restricted sections, where intelligence suggested the Centaurians were developing quantum phase technology in violation of existing treaties. As she adjusted the ceremonial sash of her diplomatic uniform, she reviewed the schematics of the station's maintenance tunnels one last time. The ship shuddered as it returned to normal space, and through the viewport, Elena saw Nexus 7 growing larger, a massive structure of gleaming metal and crystalline panels rotating slowly against the backdrop of stars. Its neutral status made it the perfect place for both civilizations to conduct their shadow war while maintaining a veneer of peace. "Commander," Captain Reynolds called from the bridge. "We're receiving the docking protocols now. The Centaurian delegation arrived 2 hours ago." Elena nodded, her expression carefully neutral. "Thank you, Captain. Let's not keep them waiting." As she made her way to the airlock, Elena felt the familiar tension building in her shoulders. After 15 years in the Diplomatic Corps' Special Operations Division, she'd learned to trust her instincts. Something about this mission felt different. The intelligence was too convenient, the timing too perfect. The station's artificial gravity embraced her as she stepped through the airlock. A junior Centaurian diplomat waited to escort her, his iridescent scales shifting color slightly, a sign of formal respect in their culture. Elena returned the gesture with a slight bow, all while noting the positions of security cameras and patrol patterns. "Commander Blackwood," the Centaurian said, his translator rendering his complex harmonics into smooth English. "I am Liaison Rentel. The negotiations will begin in 3 hours. Until then, you may rest in your assigned quarters." "Thank you, Liaison," Elena replied, following him through the station's curved corridors. Her quarters were exactly where she needed them to be, 2 levels above the restricted section she would need to infiltrate. Once alone, Elena quickly changed into a maintenance worker's uniform and activated her subdermal camouflage implant. The nanites in her skin shifted her appearance to match the ID she'd fabricated, a station technician who was conveniently on leave. She was halfway to her target when her neural implant buzzed a warning. Someone else was in the maintenance tunnels, someone who didn't belong. Elena pressed herself against the wall, her hand moving to the concealed pulse pistol at her hip. A shadow moved at the junction ahead. Elena held her breath, waiting. The figure that emerged was Centaurian, but not wearing any official uniform. His scales were darkened to absorb light rather than reflect it, and he moved with the practiced grace of a trained operative. Their eyes met, and in that instant, both knew what the other was. Before either could reach for a weapon, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights cast everything in a crimson glow. "Station security has detected an unknown energy signature," the AI announced. "All personnel must evacuate sections 12 through 15 immediately." That was exactly where they were heading, where the supposed quantum phase technology was located. Elena saw her own suspicion reflected in the Centaurian operative's eyes. "We're being played," he said in perfect English, no translator needed. Elena nodded slowly. "Someone wanted us both here. I'm the Ren Valor, Centaurian intelligence. Elena Blackwood. Earth Diplomatic Corps. The energy signature is building," Thuran said, checking a device on his wrist. "Whatever it is, it's not our technology." Elena made a quick decision. "Work together? At least until we figure out what's really going on." Theron's scales shifted to a deep blue, amusement, Elena recalled from her xenology training. "Temporary alliance accepted, Commander." They moved together toward the source of the energy signature, their training complementing each other naturally. Where Elena was direct and forceful, Thuran was subtle and precise. They reached a sealed door marked with warning symbols in multiple languages. The energy signature was coming from behind it, and it was getting stronger. "After you," Thurin said with a gesture that might have been a smile. Elena raised her pulse pistol and nodded. Together. The door opened to reveal a sight that would change both their lives forever, and mark the beginning of a partnership that neither of their governments could have predicted or wanted. The Cold War between Earth and Centauri was about to become far more complicated than anyone imagined. The artifact hung suspended in a containment field, its metallic surface rippling like liquid mercury despite being completely solid. Elena and Thurin stood before it, weapons still drawn but now pointed at the floor. The object was roughly spherical, about the size of a human fist, with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "This isn't Centaurian technology," Thurin said, his scales flickering with shades of green, a sign of intense concentration. "Definitely not Earth tech either," Elena agreed, checking readings on her neural implant. "The energy signature. I've never seen anything like it. It's almost as if it's alive," Thurin finished her thought. He took a step closer, his specialized sensors whirring. "The patterns aren't random. They're responding to our presence." A sudden surge of energy from the artifact sent them both staggering back. The containment field flickered, and for a moment, Elena heard something, not with her ears, but directly in her mind. Images flashed through her consciousness, vast ships of impossible design, worlds being transformed, and a darkness spreading between the stars. From Theron's sharp intake of breath, she knew he'd seen it too. "We need to get it out of here," Elena said, already reaching for her secure comm unit. Before the station's lighting shifted from emergency red to deep purple, the signal for a full lockdown. Heavy blast doors began descending throughout the facility. "Too late," Thurin growled, his scales now a mottled pattern of combat readiness. "Your people or mine?" "Neither," Elena said, checking the security feeds through her neural link. "Unknown vessels just dropped out of hyperspace. 6 of them, design matches nothing in our databases." They shared a look of understanding. Whatever this artifact was, someone else wanted it badly enough to attack a neutral station. "The maintenance shaft," Thurin said, already moving. "It connects to the secondary docking ring. I have a stealth ship there." "Of course you do," Elena muttered, but she was right behind him. "We need to take the artifact." Thurin paused for a split second, then nodded. He pulled a portable containment unit from his gear and approached the artifact. The sphere's surface patterns swirled faster as he carefully deactivated the station's containment field and transferred it to his own device. The moment the transfer was complete, the station shook with the first impacts of weapon fire. Elena's neural implant flooded with tactical data. The unknown ships were launching boarding pods. "They're not trying to destroy the station," she realized. "They're coming for this." "Then let's not be here when they arrive," Thurin said, securing the containment unit to his back. "Ready to trust an enemy operative with your life, Commander?" Elena checked her pulse pistol's charge and managed a grim smile. "Like you said, temporary alliance." They moved through the maintenance shaft at a rapid clip, their footsteps masked by the sound of distant explosions and the station's blaring alarms. Elena's training told her this was insane, turning her back on a Centaurian operative, especially one as skilled as Thurin, was clearly suicide. But her instincts said otherwise. Those same instincts saved their lives when the shaft's wall exploded inward ahead of them. A figure stepped through the breach, tall and humanoid but clearly neither human nor Centaurian. Its armor was organic-looking, with plates that shifted and realigned like living tissue. "Down!" Elena shouted, tackling Thurin as the creature raised a weapon that crackled with dark energy. The blast passed over them, leaving a patch of corroded metal where it struck. Thurin rolled smoothly, drawing a second weapon from somewhere while maintaining his grip on the containment unit. His pulse pistol barked 3 times, the shot striking the creature's armor with little effect. Elena added her own fire, aiming for the joints and seams. The being staggered but didn't fall. Instead, it made a sound like grinding metal and raised its arm again. But before it could fire, the Wren tossed something small and glowing at its feet. Elena's implants screamed a warning and she turned away as a flash of blinding light filled the corridor. When she looked back, the creature was gone, not dead, but completely disintegrated. Quantum cascade grenade, the Wren explained, already moving again. Highly illegal under the treaties. I won't tell if you won't, Elena said, falling in beside him. They reached the end of the shaft, where it opened into a larger service corridor. How far to your ship? 2 junctions ahead. But we've got company coming from both directions. Elena checked her neural feed. Multiple hostiles closing in, moving with inhuman speed. They really want this artifact. Then they shouldn't have let us get it first. Theron's scales rippled with what Elena was starting to recognize as his version of a wry smile. Feel like making a memorable exit, Commander? Elena found herself returning the smile despite everything. What did you have in mind? Theron's stealth ship turned out to be a sleek Centaurian interceptor, its hull modified with experimental cloaking technology. As they rocketed away from Nexus 7, Elena watched through the viewport as more of the mysterious vessels emerged from hyperspace, surrounding the station. Your ship's impressive, she said, monitoring the tactical display. But we've got 8 hostiles now, and they're launching fighters. 9, the Wren corrected, his hands dancing over the controls. One just dropped out of hyperspace directly ahead. His scales had taken on a deep purple hue that Elena hadn't seen before. The real question is how they tracked us. The artifact's containment field should block any energy signatures. Elena's mind raced through the possibilities. Unless that's not what they're tracking. The visions we saw, what if the artifact is communicating with them? The ship shuddered as the Wren executed a series of evasive maneuvers. 3 enemy fighters were closing fast, their organic-looking hulls rippling as they moved in perfect formation. Access the secondary console, the Wren said, not taking his eyes off the controls. I need you to modulate the shield frequencies. If they're using quantum-based weapons like our friend back on the station. Elena was already moving. Her neural implant interfaced with the Centaurian technology surprisingly well, almost too well. The tactical data flowed through her mind in crystal-clear streams. Shield modifications ready. But the Wren, these readings can't be right. What do you see? The enemy ships, they're not just organic-looking. They're actually growing and adapting to our defensive patterns in real time. A blast of dark energy narrowly missed their port side. The shield modifications held, but Elena watched in fascination and horror as the enemy weapons actually changed their frequency in response. It's not just the ships, the Wren said grimly. Look at the artifact. The containment unit's readings showed the sphere's surface patterns moving faster now, synchronized with the enemy vessel's attacks. And beneath those patterns, something was changing. It's not a weapon, Elena realized. It's a key. The Wren nodded, executing another series of impossible maneuvers that threw off their pursuers for a moment. The visions we saw, they weren't just random images. They were memories. This artifact, it's part of something much older than either of our civilizations. And these beings want it back, Elena finished. But why now? Why start a war between our people just to, she stopped, the pieces finally clicking into place. The Cold War. They've been manipulating both sides, keeping us focused on each other instead of looking outward. Making us easier to control when they finally returned, the Wren agreed. His scales had shifted to a color Elena had never seen before, not just determination, but something deeper. We need to get this information to both our governments. Assuming we live long enough, Elena said, watching as more enemy fighters moved to cut off their escape routes. "We're surrounded." "Not quite." Theron's scales flickered with that now familiar hint of amusement. "Remember when I said this ship had experimental cloaking technology? That wasn't entirely accurate." He reached for a control panel that seemed to shimmer into existence beneath his touch. "It's not Centaurian tech at all. I acquired it, years ago, from a derelict ship. One with markings very similar to our friends out there." Elena stared at him. "You've known about them all this time?" "I suspected. But I could never prove it. Until now." He met her gaze. "I'm about to do something incredibly dangerous and probably stupid. Still trust me?" Elena looked at the tactical display, at the enemy ships closing in, at the artifact that was becoming more active by the second. She thought about duty and protocol, about years of distrust between their peoples. "Yes," she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "I trust you." Theron's scales rippled with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. "Then hold on tight, Commander. This is going to get interesting." He pressed his hand against the shimmering panel, and reality itself seemed to bend around their ship. The universe turned inside out. Elena's neural implant went haywire, bombarding her consciousness with impossible data as space twisted around them. Colors she had no names for blazed through the viewport, and for a moment, she could have sworn she saw the fabric of reality itself folding like origami. When her vision cleared, they were elsewhere. The enemy ships were gone, replaced by an endless sea of stars that matched no known configuration in her astronomical database. "What did you just do?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Theron's scales had paled to an almost translucent shade, and she noticed his hands trembling slightly on the controls. Whatever he'd done had taken a toll. "Dimensional slip," he managed. "The derelict ship I found, it could move between layers of space-time. I never dared try it before. Too dangerous. But you did it now." Elena moved to support him as he sagged in his chair. "Why?" "Because they gave me no choice." His color was slowly returning to normal. "And because I needed you to see something. Look at the artifact." The containment unit was pulsing with energy, and the sphere within had changed. Its surface was now transparent, revealing intricate machinery that seemed to operate on principles Elena's mind couldn't quite grasp. But more than that, she could see images forming within it, star maps, coordinates, and what looked like battle plans. "They're not just coming back," Theron said grimly. "They're already here. Hidden in the spaces between normal spacetime, watching, waiting. The Cold War between our peoples, it wasn't just about keeping us distracted. They've been pushing us to develop specific technologies, guiding our scientific progress down certain paths. Making us build the tools they need," Elena realized. "The quantum phase technology my people thought your side was developing. And the dimensional research your scientists were pursuing that had my government so concerned." Theron's scales flickered with dark humor. "We've both been playing right into their hands." A sudden surge of energy from the artifact filled the cabin with swirling light. In its glow, Elena saw more visions, clearer now, more detailed. She saw vast fleets hidden in fold space, weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics, and at the center of it all, a civilization so ancient and alien it defied comprehension. "The precursors," Theron said softly. "That's what the data in the artifact calls them. They seeded our galaxy with their technology eons ago, then retreated to the spaces between spaces to evolve beyond physical form. But now they want to reclaim their domain, and they've been using us to prepare it for their return." Elena's tactical training kicked in, analyzing the threat. "These coordinates, they show positions all throughout both Earth and Centaurian space. Hidden outposts, dormant technology, they could activate it all at once. And turn every quantum device, every dimensional experiment, into a gateway for their forces. Theron had recovered enough to sit up straight. We have to warn our governments. They'll never believe us. Elena gestured at the star-filled viewport. We don't even know where we are, let alone how to prove any of this. I know where we are. Theron's scales shifted to that unidentifiable color again. The ship brought us exactly where it needed to. Look. Elena followed his gaze and felt her breath catch. In the distance, barely visible to the naked eye, was a structure that dwarfed anything she'd ever seen. It looked like a massive tree made of light and energy, its branches reaching across multiple dimensions. A precursor hub, Theron explained. The derelict ship's databanks mentioned them, nexus points where their technology could be controlled. If we can reach it, we might find a way to stop them, Elena finished. She studied his expression. But the hub is heavily defended, we have no idea how to operate it, and even getting there means crossing space that isn't meant for beings like us. He met her gaze steadily. I won't lie to you, Elena. The chances of survival are. When are they ever good? She found herself smiling despite the gravity of the situation. Besides, we've got something they don't expect. What's that? A human and a Centaurian working together. She held out her hand to him. Partners? Theron looked at her offered hand for a long moment, then reached out and clasped it. His scales rippled with warmth. Partners. As they plotted their course toward the impossible structure ahead, Elena realized that sometime during their flight, Theron had stopped being the Centaurian operative in her mind and had simply become Theron. She wondered if he'd experienced a similar shift in how he saw her. The artifact pulsed again, as if responding to their thoughts, and the ship's systems hummed with renewed energy. Whatever they were about to face, they would face it together. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to change everything. The precursor hub grew larger as they approached, its crystalline branches splitting reality into prismatic shards. Elena's neural implant struggled to process what she was seeing, geometry that shouldn't exist, energy patterns that defied known physics, and spaces that seemed to contain entire universes. Multiple contacts, she announced, checking the tactical display. The hub's defenses are activating. Theron's hands flew over the controls, his scales shifting through patterns she now recognized as deep concentration. The ship's stealth systems are failing. Whatever powered those dimensional jumps, we don't have enough energy for another. Streams of light erupted from the hub's branches, not weapons fire, but something far stranger. Where the beams touched normal space, reality rippled and distorted. Elena watched in horror as several beams merged to form a familiar shape. That's one of their ships, she said. They're not just detecting us, they're manifesting vessels directly from fold space. Then we do this the hard way. Theron's scales flickered with determination as he sent their ship into a series of impossible maneuvers. The artifact is getting stronger the closer we get to the hub. Whatever connection exists between them. It might be our only way in. Elena studied the readings from the containment unit. The sphere was now pulsing in perfect rhythm with the hub's energy patterns. Theron, look at this. The artifact's internal machinery, it's not just similar to the hub's architecture, it's identical. On a quantum level, they're the same system. A near miss rocked their ship, but Theron kept them on course. Not just a key then. A piece of the hub itself. But why would they leave something so important where we could find it? Unless they wanted us to. Elena's mind raced. Everything they've done, manipulating our civilizations, guiding our development, what if this was all a test? To see if we could work together? Theron's scales rippled with something between amusement and revelation. Rather elaborate for an experiment. Look at this place, Elena gestured at the impossible structure before them. They transcended physical form. Maybe they need to know if we're ready for what comes next. If we can overcome our differences and face something greater together. Another blast caught their port side, sending warning lights flashing across the console. Through the viewport, Elena could see more enemy ships taking form, moving to surround them. "Well," Thuran said, his voice dry, "I'd say we've proven we can work together. Now we just have to survive long enough to tell someone about it." The artifact's pulsing had reached a fever pitch, and Elena felt that strange connection in her mind growing stronger. From Theron's expression, she knew he felt it too. Images flashed between them, not just visions this time, but understanding. "The hub," they said simultaneously. "It's not a weapon," Elena continued, the knowledge flowing through her. "It's a gateway," Thuran finished. "Not for invasion. But for ascension." Elena met his gaze. "They're not coming to reclaim the galaxy. They're offering us a chance to join them." The ship shuddered as another blast struck home. Through the viewport, Elena could see they were almost at the hub's central core, a nexus of pure energy that hurt her eyes to look at directly. "The artifact will align our ship's systems with the hub," Thuran said, his scales now glowing with an inner light. "But the power surge will destroy the vessel. We'll have one chance." Elena nodded, understanding. "To prove we're ready. To show that humanity and Centaurians can face the unknown together. Sure you trust me enough for this?" There was something new in Theron's voice, not just partnership now, but something deeper. Elena reached over and placed her hand over his on the controls. "Always." Together, they removed the artifact from its containment field. The sphere rose between them, its surface now blazing with the same impossible light as the hub. Energy coursed through the ship's systems, through their bodies, through reality itself. In that moment, as space and time bent around them, Elena saw everything with perfect clarity. She saw the precursor's true purpose, the future they offered, and the choice that lay before them. She saw generations of conflict between their peoples dissolving in the face of something greater. And she saw Thuran, not as a Centaurian, but simply as who he was, the partner she trusted more than anyone in the universe. The ship's hull began to break apart as they pierced the hub's outer layers. Through the dissolving viewport, Elena could see the enemy ships pulling back, their purpose fulfilled. The test was complete. "Ready?" Thuran asked, his scales now shining with the same light as the artifact. Elena smiled, feeling the energy of transcendence coursing through her. Together, they plunged into the heart of the hub, and in that moment of transformation, as they crossed the threshold between what was and what could be, Elena knew that the Cold War was over. Not with a battle or a treaty, but with a leap of faith between two people who chose to trust each other. The gateway opened, reality shifted, and a new chapter in the story of both their species began. In the days that followed, as Earth and Centauri tried to make sense of what had happened at Nexus 7, strange signals would be detected throughout both their territories. The dormant precursor technology, rather than becoming weapons of war, transformed into beacons of peace, gateways to a future where the boundaries between species ceased to matter. And somewhere beyond normal spacetime, two pioneers explored wonders beyond imagination, their partnership proving that the greatest barriers could be overcome with trust, courage, and the willingness to see beyond ancient divisions to the promise of something more. The Cold War was over. The Age of Ascension had begun.